Welcome back to the Daily Edge. I'm here with my brothers, Todd Dailey, TJ Dailey, and today we're here to talk to you about data points. I mean, data and how we use data in our personal lives, in business, how to navigate. I think in each one of our lives at different times, we've looked to different sets of data to make decisions, to maybe improve ourselves, whether it's through a fitness journey, whether it's better data to run the businesses. So much so we have a data-driven business that Todd started. So let's jump in. Why don't you guys talk to me a little bit about some of the things that maybe you're doing or have done in the past related to data and gathering it in your lives?
You know, for me, the most challenging thing about data is that there's so much of it out there now. And as we've continued to progress technologically, I feel like the amount of data has continued to pile up, and it's been very difficult to know what data to look at and not look at. And I think that has been one of the things and decisions that's going to continue to get more and more difficult, is how to know what's relevant and what questions to even ask of the data to get like the real meaningful insights. I think I may have told this story before, but the reason Progressive Insurance got its start is because it figured out that it could take one-time drunk driving offenders, charge them whatever they want, and they would very, very likely not repeat the offense.
There's like 80% chance that
they would not repeat. It was someone driving home from a wedding or someone otherwise responsible individual that just had a couple too many drinks and obviously was kind of scared straight through that episode. And so this whole thing of what questions to ask and to answer your question, where have I leveraged data in my life? Probably the most logical that we could all probably speak to. This is an Aura ring, fitness ring. I used to have the Whoop band. I had that for probably 3 years. You're off of it. It'll be interesting to talk about that. But this just kind of gives me indications of how well I slept or didn't sleep, how well I'm ready for the day, how some of my vital, metrics, kind of where those are. Certainly we've gotten into some data from a fitness perspective and a training perspective. I'll let TJ talk about. And then, for me, this is not actually planned, but this hat, Premium Logic, is a data and analytics company that we use heavily at IMG and support other insurance agencies across the country to know their businesses better. And so that's something that I use data heavily for.
That's so interesting. You talk about so much data and what to actually look at. I'm really good friends with a collegiate basketball coach, and I forget what the software is they have, but it analyzes every single game, and it tells you when this person catches the ball on the post, he'll go to his right this many times, left this many times. When this person takes off and he dribbles, he goes to his right 60% of the time, and when he dribbles right, 30% of the times he'll cross over to his left. Like, it is an unbelievable amount of data that they have when they're studying film, almost so much so that you got to focus in on what are the critical things that are really going to improve to where you don't give someone so much data, they're just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go with it. How have you been able to kind of pare down what's important in your guys' lives?
I think it'd be more interesting to pose to you because I think it applies very specifically to Premium Logic, right? You're in an industry it's always had an inordinate amount of data, but it's been very difficult to consume, and you guys have had to determine.
Yeah, and I think the data journey starts with defining what success looks like and then understanding how to measure it. To me, those are the first two steps. You got to figure out what success looks like for any given part of your life, whether that's parenting or fitness or longevity, which ties into fitness or some other aspect of personal development or growth or professional development or growth. What does success look like? And then how do you measure it? So from a business perspective, you might measure net income or profits. You might measure revenue. You might measure expenses, which obviously is a formula there of getting to profit. So there's all these different measures of success. And then even personally, like I set goals every year around, spiritual goals or fitness goals or financial goals. And then you figure out what the measures are. So, for me, it was like how many of a certain exercise I want to do, or how many hours I spend in fitness, or what's that combination, cross training versus running, that sort of thing. So I think the biggest two steps in being able to sift through all the data that's out there is to understand what's important to you and understand what those measures are.
Yeah, I used my data, the majority, I guess, in two different instances. I handle the data from a business perspective as it relates to reporting to our organization, how we rank, how we're selling versus our competitors. So that's one aspect of it, which we can come back to that. The other aspect is obviously fitness. And I feel like what I'm using it for now is really to solve problems. If there's a particular issue I'll give you an example. So I have a race coming up. It's an 8-hour race. And to race that long at a sustained speed, there's a couple of factors that come into play. One of them is fueling, but the other is maintaining a sustainable heart rate. I can't go out and run for 8 hours in zone 4. Cardiovascularly, it's just not something the body's capable of doing. So one of the metrics for this particular event that I've needed to focus in on is my heart rate. Now, heart rate, from a training perspective, isn't necessarily always an end-all be-all. So, and we can come back to that as well. But for this particular instance, for me, it's extremely important. I need to keep my heart rate in X range. Now, how do I get there over time? Well, I need to understand a number of different things. I need to have worked long enough to understand where my maximum heart rate is. I need to have worked long enough to understand relatively closely where my heart rate zones are, so I know, okay, I can operate in. And what I've been able to do over the last 15 years is explore how long I can sustain particular efforts and in what ranges my heart is in when I'm at those efforts. So for me, I know that I need to probably be in the 130s from a heart rate perspective for this race. And I've been watching it lately. I do a lot of heat training, which increases your blood plasma and then ultimately increases your hemoglobin and allows you to transport oxygen more efficiently. And so over the last year, I started in February. I've been doing this heat training and watching how it's affecting my heart rate, especially in cooler temperatures. So I'm using data to kind of build a plan for this race, build confidence that I can sustain a particular pace at a particular heart rate. And so I'm using that data to solve a problem. If I wasn't using my heart rate data, I would go in completely off of feel. And that can be fine in a lot of instances until you get to a position where maybe the feeling doesn't align with physiology, and then you lose confidence because you might feel like you're over your skis when maybe you're not. Maybe it's a fueling thing, maybe it's a hydration thing, maybe it's something else, maybe it's a muscular fatigue thing. So, I love to use it to reinforce a confidence and to solve this problem of, okay, I need to get to a fitness level where I'm here at this pace and at this heart rate so that I can achieve the goal I want to achieve. And knowing where that target is, I can implement these different training regimens, whether that's heat training, whether that's other types of training, VO2 max or zone 2 training that help me achieve that. That's kind of how I use data. And in the fitness space, we got to explore some really cool, Corey and I did about 3 weeks ago, some new cool technology that's going to make, it's going to even add more to the data. But that's how I've been using it, is trying to solve a problem and then, utilizing my knowledge of training methodologies to achieve those goals.
Talk a little bit about, Corey is data, right? Like he would be on the end of the spectrum from just, he's posting lactate threshold every run, like he's super dialed in. Talk a little bit about what he's doing and some of the things in the fitness space that's probably more progressive than most of our viewers.
Yeah, sure. So, there are so many different things. So when it comes to training from a data perspective, if you go way back, it was all RPE, which is rate of perceived exertion, right? Before, like heart rate training, I think came into vogue. I think you started seeing some of the first heart rate training in the 80s, where the technology allowed you to, other than like taking your heart rate, where it actually allowed you to kind of measure and stay in particular ranges. And over time, that's evolved. Obviously, we have heart rate straps now. Now we have wrist-based heart rate. Heart rate straps are still kind of the gold standard, but we have the ability to measure that in real time. But when you're in situations where what happens a lot of times is coaches will program a pace for somebody and they'll say, hey, go out and run X. And it may be super, super hot that day, or it may be super hilly. And maybe heart rate's not the most, at that point in time, reliable metric. So one of the things that typically correlates with your body's effort level is lactate production. And there are what they call, there are two separate thresholds, right?
Well,
so
what's lactate?
Lactate is a byproduct produced by the body during energy metabolization. And so what ends up happening is it's measured in millimoles per liter. And your body, from an endurance perspective, when you start an effort, you're at a baseline, right? So, you have this baseline, and then you can maintain this effort. And then at a certain effort, so let's say you start at 8 minutes a mile or 10 minutes a mile, and you're here. And say when you get to 8, you get your first click up. That's your LT1, right? And that's typically, these are averages around 2.5 millimoles.
So if I'm going to try and unpack this a little bit. So my understanding is, I could probably learn something here, that lactate is something that is produced,
yes,
you mentioned, and then typically what happens is it your bloodstream that just like clears it out, isn't it? Like cleared
it can be, yes, it is cleared. Oh, and in certain instances, if you're crazy fit, it can be used for energy.
Okay, so this is, do we know what produces the lactate? Where does it come from?
I don't want to speak out of turn. Okay. Like it happens within that process.
Okay, so something produces this lactate that's then cleared. Generally, if you're just doing kind of a moderate workout, that you could do for a very long period of time, this lactate is produced and then it's cleared, produced, cleared. But there gets a point where, and this is where you start talking about these thresholds I wanted to unpack, that so much lactate is being produced and or so much energy is being used for the workout that this clearing process is it's unable to fully clear what's being produced for one reason or another.
Right.
Is that fair? Is that
right? Yeah. It is. And so the cool thing is that it correlates very heavily with where your body's at from an effort level. So like the utopia for training is to do as much, is to find an intensity that your body, that's doing two things. Number one, that's creating aerobic adaptation. So it's making you fitter while at the same time not destroying you so that you can't do it again. Because what would happen is, and you see this with people when they first begin to run, is that they'll go out and they'll just run as hard as they can. And that's why so many people don't enjoy the sport is, number one, that's not enjoyable. But number two, you go and you run as hard as you can for 10 minutes. It's not sustainable. Reminds me of this story I'll tell, and then we'll get back to this because this is kind of interesting. So one of the big things as it relates to training is not only sustainability physically, but sustainability mentally. So there was a study done that I saw recounted recently, and it increased VO2 max. Okay, now VO2 max is the maximal amount of oxygen that you can uptake and process into your bloodstream. So that typically predicts the level of output you can have at the top end as it relates to endurance. And it's not an easy metric to move. It takes a while. Well, they had this training regimen. They tested these athletes, and they increased their VO2 max 44% over 10 weeks.
What?
Right. And you would think, well, holy cow, everybody should do this. Only one person got injured, okay? Do you know what a workout was? It was 40 minutes a day, as hard as you could, 6 days a week for 10 weeks. Now, you would think that like they saw these increases, everybody's all in. The problem with the exercise was that although only one person got injured, most people wanted to quit halfway through. And there was only one person that wanted to continue, and they made it 3 more weeks. So from a mental sustainability perspective, like that's a big component here. So when I go back to saying that you want to find something that is at this sweet spot that you're getting aerobic adaptation, but also you're not physically and or mentally destroying yourself. And so these lactate thresholds, LT1, which is again that first bump. So let's say you start at 0 and around 2.5, you can hold 2.5 for let's say a couple of hours. As long as you're fueling right, like it might rise a little bit. It might start at 2.3 and it might end at 3.5.
So 2.5, 3, 3.5. These are levels of lactate in your blood.
In your blood.
Meaning it's not being completely cleared. It's starting to build up a little bit.
But it's building slowly.
Yeah, building very slowly. Okay.
Now LT2, and these can be measured. You can actually go in and measure because they say it's 4, some people it's 5, some people it's more. But once you hit your exponential, so like, it'll be 2.5, and then over 2 hours, let's say it gets to 3.5, and then if you increase the intensity, it gets to 4. At some point, it'll go to like 13, and it's just this hockey stick. That's your LT2. So that's when your body is completely over its skis. And so this metric, because we use it a lot, I think about it a lot in relation to kids. You tell a kid to go run. There's so many different paces. Even with adults, you have an easy run, you have a mod, a tempo plus, intervals, all out, race pace, different stuff. It takes a long time to figure out what those are for yourself. And as humans, we're kind of naturally wired to push past it a little bit. And it's, people will turn off their heart rate. Almost, you look at Strava, you look at these things, and they'll be like, program workout, 6 by a mile at 6:30, did great, 6 by a mile at 6:05. And in all reality, in most instances, it's hard to overtrain yourself, but like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You maybe went a little harder, but now you've got to take 2 days off. Utilizing lactate puts you in that position. If you're running sub 2.5 millimoles, it's something you could probably do. I mean, that's where double threshold came from, right? And double threshold is essentially doing a workout that's getting you aerobic adaptation in the morning and then turning around and doing another one in the evening. And the only way that you can consistently do that is by running at an effort level that isn't too intense. If you went out and ran, again, at race pace for an hour in the morning, it'd be really hard to come back and do that later that day. And most of these guys that are doing double threshold workouts are doing them 2 or 3 times a week.
So I'm picturing this. I mean, it seems like what's happening. I'm picturing this diminishing returns curve, if you can see where it's got a slope to it, and then it kind of flattens out at the end, right? Where you've got effort and then you've got benefit. You're trying to find that point where it's minimal effort, maximum benefit, and try and find exactly where that spot is before you put in all that extra effort for very, very little benefit.
Which is, there's the 80-20 rule, right? They're saying 80 easy and 20 hard. And people are starting to, like the Grant Fishers of the world, their effort is reduced a little bit so they can get 30% or 35%. And so with the reason Corey is measuring that is he wants to make sure, okay, I don't really care about my pace. I don't really care about anything else other than the effort. And I can pinpoint my effort just based on where the volume of lactate is in my blood. And then you can kind of gamify things, right? So let's say, all right, I'm going to do 7 by a K repeats, and I want to be at 2.5. And I can do that at 6 minutes a mile now and stay at 2.5 because you're resting in between these kilometer repeats. Well, over time, you can watch it get better. Over the weeks, you'll see, oh, wow. Now I'm at 2.0 at 6 minutes a mile after a month of doing this. Okay, maybe I can go down to 5.50 and get back to 2.5. And then you're working it back and forth. What is so cool, and he and I are signed up to get these in 2026, is there's a company who has developed a non-invasive, I think they started with a non-invasive blood sugar monitor. Now they have it for lactate. So you can wear a wristwatch and you can see it in real time. The way lactate works today, you have to prick your finger, right? So, and all of the top athletes in the world, right? Christoph, Christian Blumenfeld, Gustav Eden, the top 2 triathletes in the world, They utilize lactate on a daily basis. Jakob Ingebrigtsen, who's got numerous world records and was hurt this last year, but is one of the best runners in the world, is constantly measuring his lactate. But the way you do that is very similar to taking your blood glucose. You prick your finger, you put it on a stick, and then it measures in this machine. You can also do it through your ear. Now there is this new innovation that these guys have developed that we'll see hopefully early next year, where you can wear this and in real time out there. Think about this in a marathon, right? You can tell, okay, I should be fine here. I know I can sustain 2.5 for 4 hours or whatever it is, and know pretty precisely that you're not over your skis. Nothing's perfect, and you obviously have to listen to your body a little bit, and maybe there's another problem you need to solve. But as it relates to metrics and things you can use, lactate is phenomenal. I wish it was more tested, because it would be great to utilize, and we'll see how this non-invasive thing does with the youth. Again, I want to go back to that, because you tell a kid to go run a pace and you have no idea, right? They know what race pace is if they've spent enough time running to understand that. But, you don't know if easy's easy. And so I think it'll help a lot of people get more out of running and make it something that's a little bit more digestible, and, it'll help maximize performance.
If you full send and lactate hockey sticks up to 13, what is a general recovery after?
It depends on how long you do it, right? And how hard you're doing it. If you're going and running full send 400s, it could be, a lot of times you would see 3 workouts in a 10-day period. So again, like, being able to find that sweet spot is, there is a reason that all the guys that are utilizing data, one of the other big data metrics that we're utilizing, we're just going on tangent, is core temperature. Mm-hmm. That's the newest thing, right? And Connor Mance, who is going for the American record in the marathon this weekend, Clayton Young, who ran in the world championships in the marathon, they're using the core sensor. Everything really starts in the cycling world when it comes to fitness, but it allows you to measure your skin temperature, your core temperature, and then it connects to a heart rate sensor, and it uses an algorithm to predict the amount of heat adaptation you're getting when you do a particular type of workout in a particular environment. And again, that goes back to what I said earlier with increasing hemoglobin, or increasing blood plasma mass and increasing hemoglobin, when I was talking about me getting my heart rate to a particular manner. Now, you can measure your core temperature. In the past, it would have been a rectal thermometer. Not the best way to do things. But now you have this as well. So you can get this heat adaptation, and now you can measure your lactate, and you have your heart rate. So you have all of these different metrics that you can utilize to kind of help you align a particular feeling with the state of your physiology.
It was interesting. I did the core. I believe it was one of the cheat codes for me at the full mow. It was a nice day, and it didn't faze me. As it was sold to me, or told, it's like, look, you can get a workout as if you are sprinting or putting forth a lot of effort, but ultimately you're doing an incline walk, fully, submersed in several different layers. So I got to play around with the core temp thing, which I really, I locked into it before I did the full mow, and I could see a lot of benefits, and it did mix it up, and I would spend arguably more time than what I would do running. I would be out there an hour and 15 minutes, and it was a game. You're watching the app and the adaptation and trying to get to zone 4. And once you get in zone 4, you're just trucking. But I think the guy that we heard from had like a broken arm, and he was trying to train for a marathon and didn't want to take all the time off to let it rest. So that was a big key component. So it is fascinating that it used to be, I want to be in the best shape possible. I just go out and hammer. And now there's different ways that may be mentally less exhausting to help achieve X goal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's been really cool to see some of these things evolve. And there's so much more data that is being tracked that can help you from a mechanical perspective.
How costly are some of these things? So like maybe a listener's out there, they're big into running. They're like, oh man, this lactate threshold. I remember the first time that we did it, you guys took me to a track and we're pricking fingers. I'm like, what are we doing? We got this table set up, and looks like we had a drug problem there. We're pricking our fingers every couple of laps. What would it look like for somebody that is interested in doing some core training through heat adaptation or monitoring their lactate? What's the investment there?
Core sensor, I think, is $200. I think they have two versions. I'm not sure if they're still selling the first. If they are, they were selling it at a discount. I still have version 1. There's two versions. I think it's somewhere in that $200 range. As long as you have a heart rate strap that it can attach to, that's going to be the most beneficial route to go. And it is, there are, like anything in the world, right? Like with altitude, heat's the same. You're going to have your super adapters and people won't see as big of a benefit. But I will tell you that for me, it's been extremely significant. We went and did 4 miles this morning at an 8:30 pace and my heart rate was 109.
Yeah. It's 300. I just looked it up.
Yeah. So the new one's 300. The lactate meter is going to be, it's a Lactate Plus if you want to look it up. It's roughly the same price. And then you have to buy the sticks. So you're probably looking at, depending on how often you're measuring and how you do it, it's probably, I think, $200 for the meter and then $50 per box of those. And I think there's probably a month's worth in a box, or half a month, depending. Like a Corey, he'll use 3 a week. So, it's a 2-week supply for him or whatever. But it can be really beneficial, especially if you like gamifying things, especially if you want to actually see your progress in real time. It's cool to be able to see those numbers change and shift. And it can take you away from, a lot of people, Corey loves to do it on a treadmill. A lot of the pros do it as well because it's a very controlled environment. You go run 630s outside one day and that's 2.5 for your lactate, and you run it the next day and you're running into the wind. It may not be. Whereas on the treadmill, you can control it a little bit more. Now, there are plenty of people that do all of their threshold workouts outside. And you just like the treadmill, I'm sure you get a feel for it over time. You kind of start to know where 2.5 is. When we first started measuring, we would measure multiple times during a workout. Mm-hmm. And then again, when you get to know the feeling, you just measure once at the end to kind of reinforce, okay, I am where I thought I was. But that's about what it costs.
Well, you mentioned something in there, gamification, which is interesting because I think most people look at data as a way to kind of analyze past performance and then figure out how to get better. But data has been used a lot, and maybe even more so these days, at least in terms of the number of use cases in gamification and trying to build, whether that's through segments and performance on segments, or that is, your overall kind of fitness score. There's some different things. Talk about that a little bit. Anything, we could certainly start in the fitness area or even more broadly where you guys have found data to be very helpful from a motivational perspective from gamification side of it.
I can say where I found it to not be helpful. Mm-hmm. Garmin's fitness measure.
Yeah.
That's golly.
You should take 17 days off.
Yeah.
Strava's isn't too much better.
No, Strava's predictions are better than Garmin's predictions, but Strava's fitness score is the worst. And that's a great point. Maybe that's a shift in the conversation as to where it's not great. We've all experienced this firsthand with Strava. We did a race in 2020 that required us to go out and run to our earlier conversation, run as hard as we could for 15 straight, not as hard as we could, but like 90%. For 15 straight days. And I think without exception, that was all of our peak fitness as it related to Strava because it loved it. Oh, wow, you did this. That's not great. I was in the hospital by day 13 because my digestive system had gone completely haywire. That's not something that is mentally sustainable and probably very physically sustainable. But boy, Strava rewarded that. And it seems to be it still seems to be that way with their algorithm.
But it seems that people, obviously it's working. And I think it's working on the mass scale, right? There's there's probably a level of intensity, which once you cross that, or a level of advanced, right? This maybe not be for your advanced users because they're monitoring that so closely, but for your average person that's out there just trying to get active, there's probably a correlation there, and it's working for a lot of people.
Well, we talk about, if you want to do anything for a long time, put community and gamification in it. It's part of it. You want to help people develop habits, make it fun, put a community around them, find a way they can engage, which I think is vital and it is important. Now, the question is how engaging and how long-term and how much do you value the data and how glacially or fast will that data change? Like we know VO2 max, generally it doesn't change very quickly. It's a long... Like your heart rate, I know probably when you started running, your resting heart rate was probably in the 60s, maybe. And now you're probably in the low 40s.
High 30s, low 40s.
Yeah, and the adaptation of a runner and some of those things. What's interesting to me about some of these wearables and things, like I had the Whoop, which I loved. I went to the Oura Ring. I probably stopped wearing it 4 or 5 months ago. I'm probably still paying for the membership now that I think about it. But
they make it really hard to cancel. It took me like 20 minutes to figure out how to cancel a couple months ago.
Whoop?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it's all about patterns. And that's really what you said, like the adaptation, understanding where your body are. I know after wearing a Whoop for 3 years and an Oura Ring for 2 years, like I know the stupid things that I do that are going to affect my sleep. I know if I eat late. I know if I eat sugar at night. I know if I've had a couple of drinks. There are rarities where I'm like, man, I didn't sleep well last night. And sometimes it's validation. I mean, my Oura app would tell me that I didn't sleep good. And sometimes it wouldn't paint the full picture. But I kind of got to a point to where, it wasn't as valuable. I wasn't keeping it charged. But I did. There was such a learning curve in learning the things that impacted me. And then if I decided to make a decision a certain way, it would impact, but I kind of already knew it. So has there been anything for you guys that you've done for a long period of time, and then you're like, okay, I've got the benefit, I understand the physiology, I understand how my body works, and now maybe the monitor isn't as important?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is actually just kind of a one-time thing, and that was the allergen test. I took like a Everlywell was maybe the name of it, but it's one of those things where you prick your finger, you do a blood sample, whatever, and then you mail it away, and it tells you all the things that you had allergens or whatever reactions in your body to certain things. And that was a really interesting thing that then advised what I ate going forward. And I didn't necessarily need to retest it, or, I probably could have benefited every couple of years, because I think those things respond to what you have been eating and what's been in your system. And if you haven't been eating a certain thing, it's not going to be able to recognize that you have an aversion to it. But that was one thing that comes to mind that was super helpful.
I'm starting to get that way, just because of the RA thing. I keep my ring on because I want to see how I'm responding to different medicines from like an HRV perspective. And I want to have like a complete history of how my body's reacted to different things. But I definitely, yeah, you're right. Like knowing the patterns and knowing what affects me from a data perspective versus what affects me from a feeling perspective has been interesting. Because I know that if I eat late at night, that my heart rate will stay in the low 40s instead of the high 30s. I know that my HRV will probably be a little bit lower, but because my HRV is pretty suppressed by medication anyways, it's like I never used to eat after 6:30 ever. And lately I've had especially with kids sports and whatnot, I've eaten at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. And I'm going to bed pretty early. Like I'm in bed before 10. So and I don't necessarily right now feel what the data is showing. It's not correlating like it used to, where if I would do something like that, I would feel a little bit off or lethargic the next day. Maybe that's because I've cleaned up my eating a little bit. So yes, I'm eating late, but I'm eating better. So that's been a thing.
Did you notice between the Whoop and the Oura Ring, I feel like the Whoop was much more accurate. When I've got my Oura Ring, like my bands, outside of like one time, and I've been wearing this for many months now, outside of one time, my recovery and my sleep is almost always between 78 and probably 88. And it's a very tight band. Whereas with Whoop, I would wake up and it might be, certainly I would be sick before it would be like in the red, like between 1 and 30, but a lot in the yellow, 40s, 50s, 60s. The greens was tough to get into, but this is like, so I felt like there was a much wider range when I was in Whoop based on, it was more sensitive, I guess, to adjustments in some of the metrics that it was measuring overnight. And the Oura seems like it's like you're always kind of okay or pretty good.
I feel like, well, I started actually, this thing is super heavy. So I've never really worn my Phoenix. And I was talking to somebody who does, I think Christy does, and Corey both wear theirs for sleep. And I'm like, you know what, I'm going to try that because I kind of wanted to see the same thing. What's Garmin giving me from a sleep perspective versus Aura? And I've been looking more at like HRV and things, and Garmin seems to be higher. Like, in the 30s versus in the 40s. Yes, that's terrible for any of you that track your HRV, but I haven't really been paying crazy attention to the sleep, but I do find that if it's an average night, that it's somewhere between 73 and 84 for both of them, really typically, unless I've got like 5 hours, and then maybe the sleep's in the 60s. I would be interested. I'm going to have to look. Now you've got me curious.
I want to shift the conversation for a little bit. So we've talked about kind of data that's out there. I want to talk a little bit about the invisible data that's out there. You think about your phone that's listening to everything that you're saying. It's collecting data on you. And we always talk about how scary that is because you open your phone and whatever you were talking about, there's an ad that pops up on Facebook or something else. What's your guys' take on that? Is that like data being captured that you maybe don't have visibility to? Is there excitement? Like, yeah, I've got nothing to hide, like capture whatever, as long as it makes my life more convenient because you're able to tailor things more to me, great? Or is it like, I don't know about that?
I was going to say, I don't think there's a way out of it. Obviously you can shut some stuff off. I don't mind it as much. I don't mind the targeting things that I'm one of those that have nothing to hide. I'm not using my cognito filters and looking up stuff and doing things or talking about things that I'm okay if it, I get my wife and she can go through my feed and, your feed's customized to what you stop on. Like those aren't things that really bother me. Some of the things I don't like, when you visit websites, the whole cookies thing, what used to happen and what happens now is when you accept all cookies, that literally can sign you up for an email list. Where it used to be, you would have to you would check out or you would have to uncheck that little box that says, don't subscribe me to all this. Yeah. Now it's just part of the cookies. So if you visit a website and you accept all, now you're on their mailer list. And I was finding, I'm going to look at products or different things and I'm just trying to clear that thing. I just hit accept and I was getting on all these mails lists that I never signed up for. So I find that more invasive for me. But the whole listening to conversations, I don't know if there's a way around it.
Yeah, I have a similar thing. I'm kind of okay with getting things personalized, things showing up that fall underneath my interests. But having the same email address and being on the internet since it's basic, like public inception in 93 or whenever we started getting on the internet, my information is so prevalent on the internet at this point, especially doing what I did in my teens and 20s, that on my phone, I have to turn on call screening. Like if your number's not saved in my phone, Umail will call screen you because I was getting half a dozen spam calls a day. Mm-hmm. And and it's getting crazy now. It's always been crazy, but I got a call last week for a veteran burial service. And I'm like, what? And then I was like, no, sorry, I'm not, whatever, and hung up. And then I got a text message from a guy with his picture saying, hey, I'm Zach. The girl was the first call. And he's like, hey, I'm Zach, with Veterans Burial Service. I didn't respond. And then I got a call from him 20 minutes later. He actually spent the time to go through the call screening and got through, because normally I'll answer it if they spend the time to say this is who it is, and the same thing. And I'm like, man, this is so strange. And so I guess in those instances, I don't know. I'm kind of like you. It's just man, it seems like such a pain. I actually did go and signed up for Cloaked and had them remove my stuff. But in a lot of those, it's like with Rocket Money, right? Oh, we'll unsubscribe. Sure, you will.
I did find one that works.
They did it for me for SiriusXM, but they are basically taking the difference and charging me a fee That is pretty freaking close to what it would have been had they originally not canceled it for me. So they're
I thought
like,
they used to ask you what you said the service was worth. Like you could pay them what you thought it was worth. That used to be their business model.
but well, I mean, so like with them, and with this cloaked, it's like, okay, well, there's still some manual stuff. It's like when Google tells you have 380 compromised passwords.
Yeah.
It would be really nice if you could just say, update it to this, and it would go do it. But they want you to go to all 380 websites and change your pass. It's not going to happen. I don't have a week to change passwords.
So I was talking to Dodick. He gave me, it's called Clean Email.
He mentioned it when we were in Wisconsin.
I signed up. It's legit. Like it literally is. I mean, I went and for, I don't know how many dollars, whatever, $4.99 or whatever, I could put into 5 email addresses. My wife has not used her Gmail. I can't tell you. She had 40,000 emails in forever. And it has this interface where it's like unsubscribe. When you go through and it goes back. Now, the funny part is I was unsubscribing. I did this for my work email, and here I ended up unsubscribing from like people within my office because it was like, I was just like literally just clicking, and it's in one interface, and they send back, they filter, they do some things, and you can go in and look for find missing emails, but it's the first one I found that was relatively any good that literally was able to clean my email up by just going unsubscribe all the way down and creating a couple of logic rules. It was really awesome.
I have to look at that. I get about 300 promotional emails a day and about 80.
You could unsubscribe from all of them in under like 5 days. Like you click them all and they'll start filtering, and they'll you can get rid of all of them.
It's crazy how normalized. I mean, I would say that between the 3 different categories of Gmail auto filters, I get about 500 emails a day, and it's just normal. I just go through and I mark all as red, and like it's
you
crazy.
Can stop them, dude. Clean Email, for those of you who are out there, it's an AI tool. It's called Clean Email. You can add multiple email addresses. Check it out. It's the best one that I've seen.
From a data perspective, what is out there, or what do you feel is not tracked that needs to be? And this could be either from a motivational perspective, and I'll give you some ideas I'm thinking about. Like, I feel like it would be awesome, seemingly be impossible to do, but to have some sort of parenting score on a daily basis to know, like,
depressing.
How well am I doing or not doing? As you know, because again, the gamification of it, and when you see real data and real results, then it motivates you or incentivizes you to do something about it. And so I think that's where a lot of us have great intentions to strive in certain areas, but we can get enough away from it or normalize to our surroundings that it's like, okay, I'm doing good enough, it's fine. But I think about if you could measure your energy, if you could measure the number of meaningful, like in-person conversations you had and draw patterns to that in terms of how you were doing mentally well-being, measure your presence, measure your times you've served others in a given day, and find like patterns and correlations, like what things out there, and do you envision a world where any of this, or we could do a better job measuring some of these things on a daily basis that are super subjective and super hard to measure, either just from an insights perspective or from a motivational perspective to get better at it?
One that you said that I'm processing that would be interesting is energy. And here's why. Like if you think of yourself like a cell phone, and you could monitor your energy and understanding which things give you energy and which things take away, and at what magnitude, right? Like really difficult, hardcore decisions, how 10 minutes of that drains you 10%, how 10 minutes of solitude could raise you 10%. So it would be interesting to me to understand my battery when I woke up. And then if I knew specifically that working out actually gave me energy and didn't take it away, and I could see that to me would be really motivating. Like, guys, like, could you imagine communicating that to other people? Like, you wake up and you can, by working out, you increase your energy 10%, or by praying, you increase your energy. And understanding those patterns, and they're probably individualistic for each person, we should all have a little battery thing on it.
It'd be interesting because I think to do that, I think some of these guys are trying to do that in a very rudimentary way. You look at like Garmin or they track your daily stress. So like when you do certain things, but they're just really measuring physiological, like they're measuring heart rate and some other, maybe body temperature spikes a 0.1 degree when you're stressed out or something like that. Same thing with body battery. Like it's just an estimation of, hey, how much did I take out of myself the other day and how much sleep did restored it or how much whatever. I think, if we continue to progress down the path of non-invasive monitoring and being able to detect the rise and fall of chemicals that like the dopamines of the world, then I think we start to be able to measure those things. And I do feel like it would be much better to measure and gamify things that contribute to a better self and a better society. I think one of the things that's starting to happen is we're starting to gamify and measure so much that the initial goal of motivating or creating a better self is starting to get away from. And this isn't necessarily specific unless you're using like GPS points as data, but like we talk a lot about exploration and how much exploring the world and connecting with the world just improves your overall mood and you as a person, and exercise and how that. And so like you look at some of the things that we've used over the years to motivate ourselves, whether that's running streaks, whether that's doing something like city strides where we're going out and we're using that tool. But it seems like every other day there's something new being measured or something new that's being tied to us, like the Duolingo thing. I've taught to you, like Kaylin has a 280. First of all, she's a quarter Mexican. Second of all, she's got almost a 300-day Duolingo streak and she knows like 3 words. Like you're doing this every day, but it's streaking just to streak. There's no actual benefit from that.
Have you seen the notifications that come through like when they don't get in there? I was reading one of Hadley's texts and she's doing it too, and it's just like, I understand you don't like me. You don't want to, you haven't been on here in 12 hours. Like they're really hardcore. If you like promptings, like notifications for like a 12-hour, pause. Wild.
It's wild. I mean, I guess each one, as you've been in a particular niche for long enough, there's a new running app that just came out called Invitational, INVTL. And it was targeted at really, from what I can gather, people that aren't necessarily into endurance. Because the only people that I knew about it messaged me. Like I had our CEO messaged me and one other person saying, have you seen this app yet? And they're not runners at all. And it's just another one. You capture land. So if you run a loop, you capture whatever's inside of it. And it's like, now you're for somebody like me, now it's starting to get to like.
Going to run around Westfield.
I mean, I hate to say it that way, but it's not productive. It's not adding more. I'm not getting more fit, or it's not improving it starts to feel burdensome. Like, oh, well, now I have to go capture, you don't have to, but we're wired for the gamification.
Well, I think what's interesting about this is like, it goes back to what you said at the start and a little bit of what I had mentioned in terms of what goal are you shooting for? What's your problem you're solving, right? So like, I think there's a lot of that can be watered down in areas of life that are trivial and not important, or you're already kind of where you want to be from in that particular area. That's why I don't look at this as much anymore. It's because I don't feel like fitness is a real problem in my life that I'm really trying to figure out. At one point it was. And at this point, it's like, I feel good. I wake up, I'm fine. I'm not looking at that. But from a parenting perspective, I feel like I have a ton of opportunity to continue to get better and be mindful there. And so that's where I find myself kind of yearning for some sort of measure, some way that I can concretely, or make it substantial enough that I can like see something that I want to do something with. And we talk about this at work. This is a super interesting concept. We all know that as a business, an insurance business, there are 2 types of insurance we offer businesses. One is commercial insurance. This is just insuring their vehicles, their buildings, their property, giving them liability insurance in case something happens with products or services that they're providing, all the things. We also do employee benefits insurance, which is like major medical and dental and vision, those of you that have those. And so one of the things that we realized is, man, we have like 2,000 commercial lines clients and we only have, maybe 150 or a few hundred benefits clients. We could cross-sell. We always talk, it's like made perfect sense. Like we should cross-sell. We've got all these clients. We talked about it for 3 years and it just never seemed to happen. And then we created a dashboard and we showed each producer their, commercial lines producer, their top 20 accounts and said, pick 5 of these that we don't do the benefits for. And that you think would be good. They have a decent number of employees and be a good target from a benefits perspective. We walked out of that exercise with 27 concrete leads for our benefits team that year. And it was all just around like having something concrete and something to look at that was real data that then just pushed us over that goal line to do something about it versus like everyone has a good intention. So that's, I don't know, you were going to jump in. Do you have...
Well, what I was going to jump in on a little bit prior to that was, as you're talking through data in general, data, what I heard you say, which resonated with me, data is more important when we're trying to grow in something.
Yeah.
Right? I think we've all experienced that at some point. When we're trying to uncover something new, when we're trying to get better at something, when we don't understand something as well, like everything you just explained about lactate and all these levels and things, like I did the core temp thing and that was cool and that kept me going for a while. And like, I learned that, like that to me was very, very interesting. But when we're trying to get better and grow in something, I think data is super, super important. And the things that, to your point, Todd, like with your ring, you're like, I don't look at it much. I know what the kind of patterns on. Most of us just wear a ring because we're going to have one on anyways, and we might as well wear something. We seem to not value the data as much once we've understood it, digested it. And that's probably the same in the business world. Like when you first created the dashboards for IMG, it was like, man, it was like we were spending days to pull the data. By the time I pulled the data, I was too tired to analyze the data because I couldn't get, so you spend all this effort and all of a sudden it's at my fingertips. And it comes in the first day of the month and it's right there and I see it and I spend maybe 5 minutes on it because I know what to look for. And I probably don't value it as much as I did because I can digest what's happening in the business like that, right? And so now, unless I see a red flag or something that looks off, I don't dig as much. So I think once you hit I'm curious, do you guys believe there's a plateau when you pursue data and whatever that may be? There's this point in time where it becomes a plateau and the data becomes not as important.
I mean, go ahead.
I would say, I don't know that I would phrase it that way. I think depending on the question you're asking, data can get you to a certain point. I think there's always another question to ask and there's always more data to get, but I think that's that evolution. So it's funny you mentioned that because I was going to ask that question. You get a lot of people say, a lot of skeptics say, oh, you're just looking at the data, especially within the employee, like in the business world, just looking at the data, they're just looking at the numbers and they don't have any idea what's going on. They're just, assess that a little bit. What's the reality of that? Where do you see data becoming misleading or a trap or being misused that is a detriment personally or business?
Well, I think in our business, I wouldn't necessarily call it a trap. Like, I'll give you an example. Again, just to reframe, we sell mobile phone data cables, right? So like a way that it can be used in a positive manner. So we have access to the world's largest retail sales database. It's connected to all the largest retailers in the United States. And we can see in almost real time, it's actually about a month lagging, what products are selling versus what products aren't selling. So if I want to, we just had an instance where we had someone reach out and ask us what we thought their mix should be for connector types in 2026, early 2027. So when I say connector types, I mean USB-A to Lightning, C to Lightning, C to C, whatever, the things that plug in the wall and in your phone. So anyways, we can look at the historical data and we can see the trend and how it's shifting between these 4 different cable types and pretty accurately predict going forward. One thing that, and you may be right in terms of there are probably more questions to ask, but one thing that's a little more difficult, and I think to the detriment of some of our retailers, is predicting new emergence, right? Because there's so many factors that play into that. So let's say, for example, one of the things right now that seems to be in vogue is connected cables. So you buy a charger and the cable's connected, it's called captive, and the cable's connected to it. You don't have to buy a separate cable. That at times can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If there's a buyer out there and he's with a large enough retailer and he's like, I think this is going to be cool, and he buys it at scale, and it sells whatever, but the retailer is so large that it skews the data set and it makes it look like these things are going to be awesome, when in all reality, it was just one person's vision. The other area that we see this is, so with this particular entity we're subscribed to, you can rank brands by sales, right? And so a lot of times what buyers will do is, that's a qualifier. If you're not in the top 10, we're not buying your product. Well, how do we get to the top 10 if you never buy our product? It's an interesting conundrum. So I think that there is an element, and I think I spoke, this is a great time to bring it up. I said it earlier in another podcast, and I spoke to you about it yesterday. Again, this is where I think data is going to give you a lot of insights as to some of, in my world, as to some of the nuance. So it's like, okay, I'm building this particular product for the consumer. I know based on data that it's going to need this type of connector. I know based on handset sell-through data and how these particular phones perform that it's going to need this level of wattage to give the customer the best experience when it comes to charging their phone. So I can establish these few things, but there are other things that I may need, and maybe it is there in the data. Like maybe from a form factor perspective, there's a particular form factor that if we look at some of these really deep data points, we could maybe get some guidance as to what the form factor should be. But I think some of it really lends to, okay, we can get 70% of the way there through data, but 30% is super reliant on creativity and feel and just having conversations and understanding the marketplace. And the people that can do that 30% position themselves in a really good light.
I just have one curious question, has nothing to do with it. What is the most popular cable right now? Is it C2C finally?
So it depends on the retailer. Like, because if you look at somebody like, we'll use a Walmart, for example, they lag. You know what I mean? Like a Verizon store, an AT&T store, because most of their customers are new phone purchasers, it's going to be C2C almost every time. Where Walmart, that's still, they're probably still heavier A to Lightning, right? Because kids with iPads and like people are coming into Walmart.
I'm just fascinated that people still use the old USB.
Oh yeah, A to Lightning is probably, I mean, in an environment like that, it's a significant portion. It might be 30% of their
Wow. Sorry.
So yeah.
I digress.
Yeah, I think it's what's really interesting about that, and you talk about asking that next question, I think for me, the issue with data is it really tunes our mind in. Our minds are really good at focusing what we ask it to focus on in the context we provide it with. It focuses on the what and not the why, or what's really going on. So what I mean by that is a lot of times you look at a dashboard and you see red and you see a measure, or the performance measure, not where it is. That's really all that is kind of clicking, is this isn't where it needs to be. We need to fix this. A lot of times the right thing to do is ask the next question. What's really going on here? Why is this not? And that's where, to your point, you talked about there's a lot of different ways to gather data and insights, and even people that do research. Those are fundamental things. Yes, you can gather data in mass quantities through like surveys, right? You even do this politically, and then you can do it in like group settings, right? You have group kind of discussions, and then you can have like one-on-one discovery type sessions. I think it's important because you said the people that are going out having conversations, it's important to acknowledge the fact that that's data gathering too,
sure,
right? Having conversations, and there's different formats. It's not just the things that can be automatically tracked in mass volume, but I think that's the challenge, is to make sure we don't fall into that trap of, oh, this isn't where we need it to be. Somebody go make this, do what you need to do to make sure this gets where it needs to be. I think that's what happens in a lot of organizations.
Well, don't they always talk about, like when you look at health studies, one of the major ones is, I think Rogan used to bring it up a lot when you talk about like people that ate at McDonald's were X likely, but when we're X more likely to get something, right? Have some kind of medical condition. But then you look and it's like, well, hold on. These people are probably doing a lot of other things on top of just that.
Yeah.
And conversely, vegans are more likely, vegans are probably, doing all of these other things.
Correlation, not causation.
Yeah. And so, and I think that was his thing. Cause he's big on the meat eating, and it's like, well, people that ate this, did this. And that's one of the inflection points and one of the hot buttons right now in that health and wellness space is people are constantly attacking these different studies that have gone out and gathered these data points because it's not this particular type of effort, right? And it's not tested on in the right environment or on the right type of animal or mammal or whatever. Yeah, you make a great point there.
It's going to be interesting. I just think there's a real threshold there. I think our knowledge around behavioral patterns, I think this is very much true from a health perspective. I think our willingness and ability to capture more data, and not only capture more data, but be able to bring it in. That's one of the biggest challenges in business and just globally, is integrating data sets together to be able to identify patterns, right? We have a ton of health data, but it's absence the patterns that are happening in all these people's lives. And so until we can integrate that and see where they ate, where they ate their meals the last 6 months, and the fact that they're in the hospital with whatever issues, until we can bring that data together in some sort of integrated fashion, maybe AI can help with this, I don't know. I think we're going to continue to struggle I think our progress from a health perspective is going to continue to be incremental. But I think if we can identify and start to build a culture of capturing that data in a cohesive and manner that can be integrated, I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I think we'll surprise ourselves. I mean, even like the autism thing, that's a big thing going on right now. It's like, okay, so Tylenol causes it, right? That's probably, I don't know anything about that. I am not intelligent enough to speak on it, but that's one where it's like, okay, are we talking correlation? Are we talking causation? Right. Like, there's a lot of people that take Tylenol. A lot of people have some sort of autism now. So like, okay. But there's such a lack of data of, being able to identify what, a father or a mother might have been doing, that might have translated even before birth or after birth, what kind of things the child was exposed to, that it just leaves things so open-ended. So I'm interested to see if and when and how long it takes us, or if there's even an interest to really focus on data measurement and feedback loops.
Well, and what's defined as autism, and is because we have so much technology nowadays, the world's so much smaller. Like, 60 years ago, maybe there was the same ratio of people that had autism, but because you were only exposed to your town, you only knew 3 people that had autism. Or what is defined as autism, back in the 70s and 80s, it was in a lot of instances, it was considered mental retardation. Like, that's how it was classified. And now it's different. So there's that element to it as well. And then the other thing is, do you think that there is a point in time where the access that we believe we have to data causes us to oversimplify, especially human body? We know that it might as well be, it literally is, everybody is a unique thumbprint. And because we see that in certain circumstances, there is a truth as it relates to these 30 people that were analyzed in this controlled environment over this certain period of time, now all of a sudden this is applicable to the global population. Like, do we think there's a point where that happens?
I think you're right that we've got to be very cautious in how we collect data and how we use data, and not to stretch it beyond kind of what the data is actually showing. So, for example, I think it would be interesting for some of these things that you're saying, maybe it's a global population, maybe not, but like, analyzing, and, I think you can assess people of similar origins, body types, DNA, factors. I think when we get to I think things will start to click. It may be hundreds of years before we get there. Things will start to click in terms of patterns and similarities. And then as we get further down, and even at the DNA level, maybe there are some similarities. These people with these switches, right? A lot of it's talked about the switches on and off are going to be susceptible to this versus this. But I think we're going to have to create a culture of data and measuring. I think a lot of times it's so intimidating. And I think that is a fear, that it's intimidating to even fathom what it would take to capture some of this data. And I think there is a fear that it's going to be misused. And I think that's the reality of it. There's going to be some things that come out and we're going to be like, oh my gosh, this, and then, everyone's going to scatter and go kind of react to that data. And it's going to be premature. It's not going to be what we thought it was. But until we start to identify those layers, smoking, my goodness, how long did it take to figure out that smoking caused cancer? I mean, they thought it was awesome for like decades before we had any amount of data.
It's happening right now. I mean, I was watching Good Morning America, where there's a gene that if it's 60% of women that have breast cancer, it may have been women and men. And this one lady had a baby and knew about it and was able to like turn the gene off as part of it. So genetic testing is very much happening. I know someone that has like there's 3 or 4 genes related to metabolism, and three of the 4 for this person was turned off, so struggling with metabolism. But there are places out there, and I think to your point, there are going to be some universal things that we all deem as bad, like smoking or other things. But there's already the specificity happening genetically. Understanding what your body lacks specifically. The 10X Health, Gary Brecka, the stuff that they're doing, like they will analyze your genes, they analyze tons of blood work, and they'll come back and say, okay, here is your supplement, and you're deficient here, 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 and they add in all that stuff, and they make a proprietary supplement for you. So there are places that I think are being more specific that are trying to tackle that at a micro level, and I think it's only gonna get better. And there's even, gene therapy treatments now where like they can restore someone's eyesight. I mean, it's super expensive, but like, how grandpa had the ocular degeneration or something like that, where it's basically a deformity of the eye over time and you literally eventually can't see. They can reverse some of that. It's ridiculous, but gene therapy, there are some things out there that are coming, and I think the specificity will only get better and better. But I don't think it's 100 years away. I think by the time, in the next decade or so, if you have the wherewithals, there's going to be some pretty incredible stuff to extend your life.
I think there's some interesting things happening. I just don't know that. And I think there is some customization attempting to happen, but I just don't believe there's been the underlying data collection to make those really informative. When you're taking those supplements from those customized, that you're finding transformative benefits or benefits that are meaningfully impacting your life. But again, that's a perception. Certainly a perception.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's so many people out there that swear by things like AG1, and again, though, I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna be cool to see how it unfolds. We could talk about this for a week.
Yeah, I mean, I think in summary, it's just there's figuring out what success looks like to you, measuring that, figuring out what your problems are, starting with the problem, and identifying and measuring what you can. I think sometimes it's really, I'd close and saying sometimes it's really inconvenient to capture data and capture the right data. You talk about this is a very well documented in the business world, that the best measurements are really clunky and hard to track, but nobody ever wishes, once they put the system in place to track it, nobody's ever saying, gosh, we wouldn't have tracked that. So I think being open-minded, whether that's personal or professionally, kind of taking the step to capture the data, to have to see it. I think there can be a lot there.
And I'll say from all the work that I've done within my businesses and other business owners, you don't even realize where the problem is until you have really good data, until you understand what you're looking at, and you can actually, I've seen it come to life where someone's like, oh, I think my problem is this, and then you pull all the data together and you look at it and you're like, oh, there's the gaping wide hole. And for small businesses and business owners that a lot of times we don't have a lot of training, that is a gap that no one can really teach you. You're not going to learn that in school. And so finding someone that can provide data analytics for a business or give you the right things to know what to look at. Because again, the data isn't really telling you what to do. You have to have the intuition to interpret the data, but it gives you the tool. It's the tool that's necessary in order to uncover what some of those gaping holes are to be able to make changes and grow.
Yep.
Cool.
Great.
All right, that's it for data. Hopefully this is one of your data points as you continue to take the journey, whether personally or professionally. Super important stuff, and look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks.